I was asleep in the back of my F-150 when a hard knock on the window snapped me awake at 2 a.m. For a second, I didn't know where I was. Then it came back. The Walmart parking lot, Arizona desert night. Maybe Tuesday, maybe already Wednesday. When you're homeless, the days smear together like streaks of watercolor. License and registration. The officer said, flashlight cutting through the fogged-up glass. My breath clouded the cold air as I fumbled for my wallet. My back throbbed from another night on the metal truck bed with nothing but a sleeping bag and an old moving blanket. This was my life at 49. Mark Ellison, once a business owner, now dodging police and parking rules. I handed him my documents, ready for the ticket I couldn't pay. Third this week, maybe fourth. Officer Hayes looked young, maybe mid-30s, with kind eyes like he felt bad waking me. He walked to his patrol car. I watched him in the mirror, typing like routine. I'd done this dance before. But something shifted. He leaned closer to the screen, squinted, typed again. Then he stood straight, tense. Even from 50 feet away, I saw his posture change. He spoke urgently into his radio. When he returned, his hand was resting on his holster. "Mr. Ellison, I need you to step out of the vehicle slowly," he said. His voice was alert now. Hands where I can see them. My pulse kicked up. "Officer, it's just a parking thing. I'll move the truck." "Sir, please step out." His flashlight wasn't on my face anymore. It tracked my chest. I climbed out, stiff, hands raised a little. "What's happening?" Officer Hayes looked at me with something like fear mixed with confusion. "When I ran your license, something came up," he said. "There's a federal flag on your file from 1987. 1987? I was 17. He turned his screen so I could see. Red letters blinked like a warning. Federal flag. Homeland Security notify. Subject of interest. File date. August 15th, 1987. "They want your exact location," he said. "They're sending someone." My hands trembled. August 15th, 1987. That was the day my Uncle Raymond died in that car crash. The same uncle who left me his Chevy, the truck I used to build my landscaping business. Uncle Raymond had been secretive about his job, always joking about paper pushing for the government. I sat on the cold curb while Hayes paced nervously, waiting for whoever was coming. All I could think was, what was Uncle Raymond involved in? And why had my ex-father-in-law, Victor Pruitt, looked so satisfied years ago when he learned I was related to him? "Ellison," he'd muttered to his son Daniel when he thought I couldn't hear. "That explains it." 20 minutes later, a black Suburban with government plates glided into the lot. No sirens, no flash, just quiet authority. A woman stepped out, badge glinting under the streetlight. Tall, sharp, steady. "Mark Ellison?" she asked, though she already knew. "Son of Leonard Ellison. Nephew of Raymond Ellison." "Yes, ma'am." She studied me, middle-aged, rumpled, sleeping in a truck, and something in her expression softened. "Mr. Ellison, we've been trying to find you for a very long time. Your uncle left something behind before he died, something nationally significant. And I believe your current situation ties directly to what he uncovered 37 years ago." She pulled out a tablet, swiping until she found a photo. Uncle Raymond, younger, in uniform, standing with men I didn't know. And behind them, barely visible, but unmistakable, was a much younger Victor Pruitt. "Your former father-in-law isn't simply a retired banker," Agent Dana Kincaid said. "And your uncle didn't die in an accident. The flag on your file was placed to protect you. An alert if anyone tried to destroy your life the way they destroyed his. Unfortunately, it triggered late. The cold night felt colder. Everything made sense. Victor's hostility when he learned who my uncle was, his slow sabotage of my business, his push to separate me from my wife. He hadn't been preserving his family's image. He'd been burying a secret my uncle died trying to reveal." "Mr. Ellison," Agent Kincaid said, helping me stand. "We need to discuss what really happened in 1987 and why Victor Pruitt spent the past year ensuring you lost everything. He believed if he broke you, you'd never uncover what your uncle left. He miscalculated. 6 months earlier, I'd been living a version of the American dream. My company, Desert Ridge Landscaping, had 12 employees and contracts with half the commercial districts in Tucson. I'd built it from nothing, starting with just a push mower and that old Chevy, 20 years of brutal heat and long days finally paying off. I was known as the reliable one, the guy who answered his phone, showed up early, and finished strong. My wife, Lauren, and I had been married 24 years. Two great kids, Chase, 22, finishing business school at ASU, and Emma, 19, studying nursing. Smart, driven, good. Our home in the Catalina foothills had the classic white stucco and red tile roof, the picture of comfortable middle-class success. But Lauren's parents had never warmed to me. Victor Pruitt told Lauren I wasn't the future he imagined for her. A landscaper, he'd said, gripping my hand too hard at the country club. I watched him calculate my worth and find me lacking. His wife, Margaret, was sweeter in tone but worse in delivery, always slipping in reminders of what Lauren could have had. Dr. Benson's son just bought an 8,000-square-foot home in Paradise Valley, she'd say at dinner. His cardiology practice is doing wonderfully. Remember when he took you to prom, dear? Victor always launched into monologues about markets and portfolios while I cut my steak in silence. Daniel, Lauren's younger brother, smirked through it, inheriting his father's arrogance and his real estate empire without ever sweating for it. If you love real emotional stories, hit subscribe. We post one every day. Dad built something from nothing, Chase would say, defending me with the fierce loyalty only a son earns from years of sweating beside his father in the summer heat. He employs 12 people. He creates jobs. Victor Pruitt would just swirl his wine, unimpressed. Anyone can mow a lawn, Chase, he'd reply. Building real wealth requires strategy. Your father works in his business, not on it. Men who work with their hands hit ceilings early. But I had my pride. Every property I maintained, every hedge trimmed to perfection, every irrigation problem solved at sunrise meant something to me. It was proof that hard work counted for something in this country. No inheritance, no silver spoon, no connections greasing my wheels. Just Mark Ellison and the grit to outlast anyone. Lauren defended me, too, at least at first. Mark's a good man, Dad, she'd insist. He takes care of us. Isn't that enough? Victor would lean back, cold eyes sharp. There's surviving, and then there's providing the life you're capable of. You settled, sweetheart. You could have had more. The strange thing was, our life was good. Solid. Real. We took trips to San Diego every year, owned 2 dependable cars, and paid our bills without fear. I coached Chase's baseball teams for a decade. I was front row at Emma's dance recitals. We hosted barbecues with friends, had neighbors who cared about us, ate at restaurants where the servers knew our names. It wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. Earned, not handed down. But Victor kept whispering doubts into Lauren's ear, watering them with carefully placed comments. With every holiday, every dinner, every casual insult disguised as small talk, he nudged her further from me. Introductions became humiliations. This is Lauren's husband, he'd say to his golf buddies, as if saying my actual name might cheapen the air. He does yard work. His wife, Margaret, would seat me at the far end of the table, the unspoken message clear: I was an accessory, not family. The last normal day of my life was a Thursday in March. I'd just secured a major contract for a new medical complex, the biggest deal I'd ever landed. I came home with champagne, thrilled to celebrate. Instead, I found Lauren at the kitchen table with her parents, papers spread across the surface. Victor looked up with a gleam in his eyes I'd never seen before, pure triumph. Mark, Lauren said stiffly, we need to talk about what comes next. Everything started sliding downhill the moment Victor retired from his long-held position at Desert Valley Bank. Retirement gave him what men like him shouldn't have: time and a mission. That mission became fixing his daughter's life. He visited her real estate office every morning with coffee and condescension. You're nearly 50, sweetheart, he'd say, browsing her listings. Showing starter homes? You should be selling estates. Look at what your peers are accomplishing. Then the sabotage began. Daniel Pruitt called me into his downtown office. He owned several retail centers across Phoenix, and my company maintained all of them. That work made up a third of my annual revenue. Steady, predictable income. Mark, nothing personal, Daniel said, sliding a termination notice across his polished desk. Found another company that's 20% cheaper. You understand, it's business. I stared at the paper. Daniel, my team knows these properties inside and out. We've worked together for 8 years. Decisions made, he said, already checking his phone. They start Monday. 300,000 in contracts evaporated. But it didn't stop there. Victor's banking connections reached deep, and within days, my business line of credit was suddenly put under review. Desert Valley had been my bank for 15 years, never a missed payment. Why now? I asked the branch manager. Payroll's due Friday. Just routine, Mr. Ellison, he said. Should clear up in 4 to 6 weeks. 4 to 6 weeks. I drained my savings to cover 2 payrolls. Maxed out credit cards for a third. By the 4th week, I began letting people go. Miguel, I'm sorry. I told my foreman of 8 years. As soon as this clears, you're coming back. I know, boss, he said, but I saw fear in his eyes. 3 kids, a mortgage, he couldn't afford a maybe. Meanwhile, Victor tightened his grip on Lauren. He brought her listings for multi-million-dollar homes, dropping names of men from their social circle who were more suitable. Remember Ethan Collins from the club? He'd say casually. His development firm just got the airport contract. Asked about you the other day. Newly divorced. Lauren started coming home late. Then she stopped. She removed her wedding ring, claiming it made her fingers sore while typing. When I questioned her, her voice was ice. Maybe Dad's right, she said. I've thought about this for years, Mark. You're good, but you're not enough. Look around. Our friends have moved ahead. We're stuck. Stuck? We raised 2 amazing kids. We own our house. We're stable. I want more, she said simply. 2 weeks later, she filed for divorce. The prenup Victor pushed for before our wedding, one he paid to draft, slammed shut like a steel trap. Without business income or credit, I couldn't fight it. Lauren got the house, both cars, and primary custody. I got 72 hours to pack my life into a truck and supervised visits arranged by one of Victor's old friends at the courthouse. Dad, why can't you just come home? Emma whispered during one of our coffee shop visits. Lauren waited outside, arms crossed. It's complicated, sweetheart, I said. Your mom and I just need time. But Victor wasn't finished. He used his influence to quietly spread word among property owners that my company was unstable. Contracts vanished. Within 4 months, I went from a respected business owner to a man sleeping in his truck at the edge of town, washing up at the YMCA, and rotating parking lots to avoid tickets. The final blow came when I confronted Victor outside his country club. You did this, I said. You destroyed everything. He didn't deny it. I warned you decades ago. You were not the man my daughter deserved. Some of us are meant to rise. Others are meant to maintain the lawns. You should have stayed in your lane. My lane? I built something. I raised a family. I worked in dirt, he said, adjusting his golf glove. And now you're back where you belong. That night in the Walmart lot, when Officer Hayes ran my license, I thought I'd get another citation I couldn't pay. Maybe even jail time. I was close to giving up. 3 weeks earlier, I'd sat in my truck with my father's old revolver in my lap, wondering if everyone would be better off without me. The only reason I didn't do it was the thought of Chase and Emma learning their father walked away from them. But when Hayes mentioned a federal flag from 1987, something jolted loose in my memory. 1987? I repeated. Officer, I was 17 then. I've never been in trouble. Hayes scrolled through his screen. This flag connects to a Raymond Ellison. Relation? My uncle, I said quietly. Uncle Raymond. The man who died that summer. The man who left me the battered Chevy that became the foundation of my business, apparently leaving far more behind than an old truck. But Uncle Raymond had always been cagey about his career, brushing off questions with vague hints about serving the country in ways most folks weren't meant to understand. He was just my uncle, I said quietly, though the pieces of a puzzle I never knew existed were starting to snap together. He died in a car crash that year, single vehicle, straight road, no explanation. Mr. Ellison, I need to make a call, Officer Hayes said, stepping away from my truck but never taking his eyes off me. I watched him talk urgently into his radio, his free hand cutting through the air as he explained something I couldn't hear. 20 minutes later, a black Suburban rolled into the Walmart lot. Agent Dana Kincaid climbed out, nothing like the loud, dramatic federal agents you see in movies. She was steady, contained, and treated me with a kind of respect no one had shown me in months. Mark Ellison, she said, offering her badge. Homeland Security. We've been searching for the next of kin of Raymond Ellison for 37 years. She pulled out a tablet, keying in passwords, unlocking secured screens. Your uncle wasn't just in military intelligence, Mark. He was part of a classified counterintelligence operation that uncovered a major Soviet spy network embedded in American financial institutions during the 1980s. Soviet spies in Arizona? Not just Arizona. Across the country. They used banks to move money and steal financial intel. Your uncle identified the entire network. He was 2 days away from testifying before a federal grand jury when he died in that crash. She handed me the tablet. Even with heavy redactions, the remaining fragments made my stomach twist. Grainy photos of bank executives with known Soviet operatives, financial logs showing irregular transfers, and a list of suspected collaborators. One name hit me like a punch. Victor Pruitt, Daniel's father. Your uncle died before he could testify, Agent Kincaid said. But he was smart. He had evidence. The alert on your file was designed to notify us if any family member ever surfaced in the system under distress. If the network was still alive, they might try to eliminate potential threats. You think Daniel knew who I was? I asked, though I already knew. Mark, she said. When did Daniel learn you were Raymond Ellison's nephew? I thought back to a dinner party early in my marriage to Lauren. Daniel's father, Victor, was still alive then, in his 80s. When Lauren casually mentioned that my uncle had given me my first truck, Victor went pale. Raymond Ellison from Fort Wooka, he'd asked. When I confirmed it, he'd whispered something harsh to Daniel. Daniel's eyes had changed that night, calculating, unsettled. About 19 years ago, I said slowly. Victor was still alive. They both acted strange. Agent Kincaid nodded. We believe Daniel has spent years trying to figure out what you might have inherited. When he couldn't find anything, he decided to destroy your life instead, eliminate the possibility you'd ever discover the truth. But I don't know anything. Uncle Raymond never told me any of this. That's what we need to verify. Your uncle was a genius at hiding things in plain sight. He left you his truck for a reason. But there's something else, something we've never found. Daniel's recent escalation tells us he believes you're close, even without realizing it. She stood and offered her hand. Mark Ellison, we need your help. Find what your uncle hid, and we'll help restore your life. More importantly, we'll expose what Victor and Daniel Pruitt have covered up for 40 years. For the first time in half a year, I felt something other than hopelessness. Purpose. Like Uncle Raymond had been shielding me all along. The next morning, Agent Kincaid and I drove to my father's house in Phoenix. Dad still lived in the old ranch-style place where I grew up, keeping it immaculate at 74. He'd stored Uncle Raymond's belongings in the garage all these years, boxes I'd never cared enough to look through. Ray was paranoid those last months, Dad said, pulling dusty boxes down. Said someone was following him, tapping his phone. I thought it was stress. 3 hours passed as we sifted through uniforms, photographs, letters from his army days. Then Agent Kincaid opened a battered military locker. The bottom's too shallow, she murmured, feeling the metal edges. She pressed a corner, and a hidden panel clicked open. Inside were microfiche slides and a leather-bound journal sealed in plastic. She held a slide to the light. Even from a distance, I saw they were bank documents. This is it, she whispered, losing her composure for the first time. Your uncle recorded everything. Transfers, meetings, surveillance photos. She set up a portable microfiche reader in Dad's kitchen. We huddled around it. The evidence was overwhelming. Victor Pruitt hadn't been a mere suspect. He'd been a key architect, using his position at Desert Western Bank to funnel Soviet money into American fronts. Millions flowed through shadowed accounts. Then she showed me a photo from 1986 that changed everything. A young Daniel Pruitt, maybe 30, shaking hands with a known Soviet intelligence officer, Dmitry Volin. In the background, Victor watched approvingly. Another photo showed Daniel exchanging briefcases with the same man at a financial summit in Mexico City. Daniel wasn't protecting a legacy, Agent Kincaid said. He was part of it. When Victor stepped back, Daniel modernized the network, shifting from Soviet espionage to laundering money for Russian oligarchs. The journal held Uncle Raymond's handwritten notes, detailed tracking of the Pruitt family. One entry from July 1987 stopped my breath. They know I'm watching. Victor called my CO to have me transferred. I made copies of everything. If anything happens to me, my nephew Mark will inherit more than my truck. The truth always surfaces. We need to move quickly, Agent Kincaid said, already dialing. If Daniel destroyed your life piece by piece, he's still active. Within hours, Federal agents had warrants for Daniel's homes, offices, and accounts. I sat in Agent Kincaid's vehicle as they raided his Scottsdale mansion. Daniel came out in handcuffs, shock twisting into rage. When he saw me, his eyes burned. "You knew," he spat as they loaded him into a federal SUV. "You've always known." "No, Daniel," I said. "You demolished my life because of your fear. You exposed yourself." The investigation exploded. Victor and Daniel's financial world collapsed. Real estate holdings, offshore accounts, bank executives tied to illegal transfers. Over $300 million traced, seized, exposed. What began in the 1980s unraveled in weeks. My phone rang. It was Chase. "Dad, what's going on?" "Mom's freaking out. The news says something about Russian money laundering. They're saying you're involved." "I'm not involved the way they think," I said. "Your grandfather has been hiding something terrible for decades. He tore our family apart to keep his secrets buried." "Mom wants to talk to you," Chase said. I heard muffled voices, tension, confusion. Then Lauren came on the line, her voice shaking. "Mark, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. My father told me you were dragging me down, that you weren't on our level." "But it was all lies, wasn't it?" she whispered. "He wasn't scared of you. He was scared of what your uncle left behind." Her sobs were raw, the kind I'd only heard once before when her mother was in the hospital. "I threw away our marriage for a lie. I let him twist everything. Mark, our life was real, and I broke it because I believed him." Agent Dana Kincaid tapped my shoulder and turned her screen toward me. The government had frozen more than $50 million in Pruitt family assets. Victor Pruitt's empire, built on corruption and fear, collapsed in a single day. Daniel Pruitt was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison for financial crimes stretching across 4 decades. The judge called it one of the most extensive money laundering networks ever uncovered in the Southwest. His brother, Andrew, received 5 years and lost every real estate license he held. Their mother, Elaine, cleared of direct involvement but devastated, moved to Vermont to stay with a sister and never spoke to me again. Desert Western Bank was placed under federal oversight, paying $90 million in fines for systemic failures. 23 executives were indicted. The scandal dominated national news, reporters calling it the Pruitt Network, tracing its ties to Russian oligarchs who had turned American banking into their personal laundering service. Homeland Security awarded me $2 million for recovering the documents, plus another $1 million from seized assets to compensate for the deliberate destruction of my company. It wasn't about the money, though it changed everything. It was vindication. Every person who'd watched Daniel belittle me at those country club dinners now knew the truth. The man who'd loved calling me dirt under his fingernails was in shackles. I rebuilt Green Valley landscapes from the ground up. But this time, I did it the way I always wanted. I hired back Miguel and the old crew, giving them equity in the business. We grew bigger than ever, free from the reach of the Pruitt name. Even the medical complex that cut our contract when Daniel was trying to bury me called, asking us to return. I charged them double without blinking. 6 months after Daniel's sentencing, Emma looked at me across the dinner table. "Dad, you were never the one who wasn't enough," she said. "They were. Grandpa hid behind his money because he was a criminal. You're the one who actually built something." Chase changed his major from business to criminal justice, inspired by Agent Kincaid. "I want to go after the Daniel Pruitts of the world," he said. "The men who think wearing a fancy suit makes them untouchable." Lauren and I didn't get back together. Too many wounds, too much broken trust. But we learned to be civil for the kids. She admitted her father had poisoned her slowly, feeding her half-truths until she believed my work ethic meant I lacked ambition. "He made me think I deserved better," she said during our last conversation about the marriage. "But what I had with you was the thing that mattered. I traded something real for fool's gold." She sold the house, rented a small apartment in Tempe, and rebuilt her real estate career from scratch, helping first-time buyers instead of chasing high-end listings tied to her father's connections. Last I heard, she was doing well. Officer Hayes and I ended up unlikely friends. We grab a beer once a month at a sports bar downtown. One night he said, "You know, Mr. Ellison, that night I ran your license. Something told me to do it. Instinct, maybe something more. Maybe that something more was Uncle Raymond. Maybe he'd been waiting nearly 4 decades for the right moment, for justice to finally break the surface. He died protecting this country from enemies hiding in plain sight. And 37 years later, his nephew brought the truth home. I still drive a truck, still work with my hands, still come home covered in honest dirt. But now I know the truth. Daniel Pruitt didn't try to destroy me because I wasn't good enough. He tried because he feared I might be exactly the man capable of exposing everything his family really was. The landscaper he mocked had been sitting on buried evidence powerful enough to topple dynasties built on lies. My story isn't about revenge. It's about truth taking its time. About how secrets buried in the desert eventually rise to the surface. And about how people who say you're not enough are often terrified you might be better than them in every way that matters. Men who work with their hands, who build, who sweat, who take pride in honest labor, they're the backbone of this country. And sometimes they're the ones who end up keeping America clean in ways no one ever imagined. Thank you for listening. And remember this, your worth isn't determined by someone else's blindness to it. It never was.